Support for your public radio station comes from our members and from Kodak Center, presenting stand-up comic, actress, and writer Tig Notaro in her Out of Nowhere tour, Sunday, June 7th. Tickets at kodakscenter.com.
From WXXI News, this is Connections. I'm Evan Dawson. Our connection this hour was made in late December 2014. My first year hosting Connections, and I just wanted to unplug my brain a bit around the holidays and talk about books. So I invited a cross-section of the community to share their favorite book that they read that year. And I thought, maybe it was a self-indulgent idea, but what the heck? We do 500 hours a year on the show. We try to create this public square, and if a show flops, it flops. I could live with it. But it turned out to be very popular. Listeners loved hearing about books that they might have missed, and sometimes we need a break from the heaviest news of the day. So these 2 hours, we are doing it live, and it's a chance for you to pop in with your favorites as well. Favorite books are back these 2 hours. We've got guests lined up in studio to join us, popping in and out, some of them, some staying with us for the first full hour here. And if you've got a favorite book that you read this year, doesn't have to have come out this year, but something you read this year that you loved, we'd love to hear about it. Connections@wxxi.org. In studio, let me welcome Emily Clasper, Director of the Rochester Public Library and the Monroe County Library System. Welcome back to the program.
Thanks so much.
I'm sort of ashamed to say this is the first visit from Michael Solis, who's Executive Director of Writers and Books for about the last 3 months or so. Welcome.
Yeah, I'm really happy to be here, so thanks.
This is an official invitation to come back separately, and we'll just sit down and drill into your route to Rochester and how things are going, your vision for Writers and Books. You want to come back on a different day and do that?
I would totally love to do that. That'd be awesome.
We're doing that very soon. So Michael's here, and on the line with us, Laquanda M. Fields, who is known as the Fab Librarian, is back with us. Hello, Laquanda.
Good morning. Good afternoon, actually.
Good afternoon, indeed. So we're going to start by asking all of our guests just to choose one book for starters here, and then I'm going to work in some listener feedback, and we've got plenty of time. In fact, Emily Clasper read 109 books this year and sent me like 15 of them, so we could just read your books all the whole hour. But
I know, we could just go to town just with this list here.
109.
109, and I just finished one today, so who knows? We might make it around 110, 111. We still got time, right?
Well, if you're going to pick one to start, where do you start?
All right. It's really hard to start. I came up with this list of 15, just because we like to kind of publish what are the director's picks for for her top reads of 2025. We'll be coming up with that list from the library really soon, so if you want to see all of my picks, you can. But one of my favorite genres to read is historical fiction. I like to learn something while I'm reading, so I like to really sink my teeth into something that's really well researched and not only tells a really good story, but that I can really learn something about the era that the book is, the story is set in as well. So one of the ones that really kind of got me this year was The Lilac People by Milo Todd, which I read this fall, and this is a kind of a World War II era book that really took me by surprise. A couple of friends had recommended me this one, and it is a Holocaust and a post-Holocaust story, but it really focuses on the lives of the LGBTQ community during that era and how the aftermath of the Holocaust was very different experience for that community who was persecuted by the Nazis, but also didn't really get the same treatment as other people who were persecuted after the liberation of the camps and all of that. They continue to be persecuted after that. And that was an aspect that I really didn't know anything about. And I learned about it. And I am not a crier. I'm not, but wow, this one really got me because this was something that I could really relate to in terms of the people that I love and the people that, the experiences of people in that time that I just didn't know about and the aspects of that time. It was very well told story, and I would recommend it to a lot of people, but maybe not if it's going to hit a little too close to home.
The book is called The Lilac People by Milo Todd. And if you're not from Rochester, you might say The Lilac People, but either way.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. I wonder how many people outside Rochester say lilac. The lilac people, Milo Todd, and I wish, Emily, that we weren't at this moment where it feels like that we need to spend a little bit more time getting back to understanding the story of the Holocaust, the story of persecution and what actually happened. I think we are learning almost month by month this year, but year by year now, as we lose survivors, that there's going to be a change in historical understanding, or even what people accept as truth, which is horrifying in some ways, but also that's why literature like this is probably really, really important.
Yeah, it's a really important thing for us to be revisiting and really getting a good understanding of the entire story, especially right now. And I would absolutely recommend it. Just maybe a little bit of a content warning for some folks.
All right. That's The Lilac People by Milo Todd. All right, Michael Solis, your first pick. You are up.
All right. Well, I did not read 108 books or 109 or 110 yet, but
Neither did
I'm
I,
working
and I
on
read
it.
a lot for the show.
I can try to squeeze them in at the very last minute. But my favorite book of the year, I know we were supposed to be talking about light topics and happy
It's
topics.
okay.
But I chose One Day Everyone Will Have Always Been Against This by Omar El Akkad, which is a National Book Award winner. Omar is actually an honorary board member of Writers and Books, which is fantastic, and is a former Rochester Reads author. But it's a heavy book. It's a searing book. It's about the Western world, the global North, and our supposed ideals and principles. And are we actually living these, or is this a farce, right? It's a collection of essays on Gaza, climate collapse, racism, moral hypocrisy, and it's called kind of a breakup letter between Omar and the global North. It investigates, who is human, who is not, who has rights, who doesn't. So I think for anyone who's feeling frustrated at the current moment in our current political climate, it would be essential reading for anyone who's trying to grapple with this idea of how do we live ethically in the world? What is right? What is just? What is fair? And there's a reason why it won the National Book Award. It's a fantastic book.
And this, so Omar is, you said, an honorary board member?
Yep, honorary board member of Writers and Books. And I believe he was a Rochester Reads author.
American War.
Yep.
That was published in 2017, so that was probably around 2018.
I think it was either 2018 or 2019 when he was the Rochester Reads author.
So we have the Rochester Reads author on the program every year.
Yeah.
And I'm going back because, you read so much and you go, that's one that is not, you're not going to forget. It's probably the first novel that I read that was a dystopian sort of near future climate change novel.
Yeah.
About competition for resources and what happens in the American South and what happens in this country. I think it was set like 50 years in the future. I'm trying to remember. It's been 7-8 years, but a beautiful novel. And I love the title of the book that you selected, that One Day Everyone Will Have Been Against This, because I think it's an interesting and useful exercise for us to ask, what norms or practices right now will our grandchildren say, I can't believe you did this? And that's kind of the premise right away here, in the hands of a great writer who takes you to some pretty heavy places with that idea there.
Yeah, and I think we do have to think about legacy. We have to think about our choices, what we support and what we don't support. And I think Omar is calling truth to power in that sense. And I don't think we see enough of that in our political leaders. I think there's a lot of frustration, where many of us are frustrated with the current moment, right, on many sides of the table. So I think it's great when, we see in our art artists who have the courage to call truth to power at a time when this is absolutely necessary.
Omar El Akkad, One Day Everyone Will Have Been Against This.
Yes, and he started that. I think he just tweeted that line, and it went viral, and then he turned that tweet into a book.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Great selection there. Okay, let's turn to Laquanda M. Fields for your first selection of the hour. Go ahead, Laquanda.
Thank you, Evan. So my book, of course, I didn't read as many as Emily, but who does?
That was a real flex right off the top from Emily, I got to say.
Right. Just put us all to shame, Emily. Geesh Louise. But my favorite book this year that I read was The Vanishing Half by Britt Bennett. And Britt Bennett is actually coming to Rochester through the Rochester Speaker Series in April, which I plan to be flying back for. But this book is, I guess, considered literary fiction, a little bit of historical fiction, because it does take place at in the 1940s primarily, in a fictional town in Louisiana. And it really is a book that stuck with me. When I was thinking about one book that I had to recommend and share for this conversation, it had to be that book. It left me thinking about the choices the characters made, and at what cost. It's about race and family and reinvention, and all of those things. But really, what it's about is twin sisters. They're Black twin sisters that live in a fictional town where all the folks of that town have very, very fair skin. So they break free from their hometown and ultimately end up living two very different lives. So one sister lives her life as a Black woman, and another sister decides to live her life as a white woman. And I think that what made me really love this book is that it reminded me of a book that I read for a Black woman literature course that I took many years ago at MCC. The book is called The Passing. And I read that book, and this kind of reminded me of that same sort of book about identity. But not only that, but how some folks way back then made the choice to do what they called passing in order to survive, in order to create a better life for themselves and their families. So totally emotional, totally like gripping, but very well worth the read.
Laquanda, I was telling the panel in studio before the show that, you know, I'm kind of digging back into John Grisham because my older son is reading some John Grisham, and I'm thinking like, oh, it's interesting. It's a little formulaic. The characters are a little cliche. But hey, you know, reading is reading, and as Emily Clasper will tell you, anybody who's reading anything, pretty much anything, that's good. But I am curious to know in a subject like this, where you're writing about the concept of passing, and the choice to live as a white person, to lie and say that the rest of your family is dead, the fear that you may have of being found out. I have not read this book, Laquanda. I'm curious to know if you think the characters are richly drawn and not sort of stereotypes or cliches, but well done.
Yes, thank you for bringing that up, Evan. Absolutely. So I think that there definitely layers to the characters in this book. So really, when you are learning about their decision, right? Desiree's decision, Stella's decision, you are really thinking about, is this a good or is a bad choice, right? But honestly, there is no good or bad choice, right? I think that the characters really did what was best for them, what they felt that they needed to do in order to survive. But what really, as a mother, what really kind of made me think more about this in a nuanced way is was thinking about my children. And if I was faced with a decision like that, would I move forward and decide to pass if I had the opportunity, because I knew that it would bring a better life, not only myself, but for my daughters. So it definitely has some layers. I would say that Britt Bennett did an excellent job with showing those layers and providing nuance so that the characters were not flat. It's a very complicated story weaved in with other family drama, and really about like reinventing yourself to survive if you have the opportunity to do so.
All right, the book here, The Vanishing Half, a historical fiction novel by Britt Bennett. That's the first choice from Laquanda M. Fields. And so, all right, we're off and running. And yes, listeners, we're going to be cataloging and creating a list for the books, which we'll have in our show notes. That's okay. Megan Mack just looked at me like, oh, yeah, we're doing it live this year. We've pre-recorded this a lot. That's a lot easier to do. That's okay. We're going to create a list for everybody because a lot of great ideas here. Before I ask our guests for their second round of selections, let me just read a few emails from listeners that have already come in. I got Charlie first. He says, Liz Moore's God of the Woods had me wide awake when I should have been sleeping. Taking place in the Adirondacks, Moore really understands the dynamic between the locals and the well-to-do who build their vacation homes in the mountains. Moore leads the reader down some dead ends that I never saw coming with the plot of a missing girl from a camp. If you've ever attended a sleepaway camp or worked at one and love mysteries, this is the book for you. Don't miss it. I read the first chapter and immediately sent a copy to my former camp counselor daughter, who had already bought the electronic version. All right, Charlie, the book is God of the Woods by Liz Moore. I spent every summer of my life at YMCA Camp Anyasa down on Lake Chautauqua growing up. So yes, I'm with you there, Charlie. You may have me in there. Thank you for that. Let's get Nan in Geneva, who says, I love mysteries and historical fiction. Everybody loves historical fiction today. I love mysteries and historical fiction and American colonial era history. Ariel Lawhon's The Frozen River combined. We just had a reaction in studio from Emily Clasper. You've read that?
That was one of my favorite books last year that I read.
All right, so here's what Nan says about that. Combined all three with a whiff of girl power. Based on the daybook kept by midwife and healer Martha Ballard, who practiced in the Kennebec Valley of Maine. The novel is set during the hard winter of 1789 when the Kennebec flash froze, trapping a murdered man. In her role as a healer, Martha is asked to make observations about the cause of death and reluctantly becomes intertwined in the complex investigation that reveals the power structures, inequities, and biases of the time. And Nan says this is a rum mystery. So, Emily Clasper, yeah?
Nan, good choice.
There you go. Nan and Geneva, thank you for that. And we heard from Charlie. Here's Charles with 2. And both of these books, by the way, sound really good to me. Charles says, there was a book written this year about the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald that sounded absolutely fascinating. I say sounded because when I braved the gales of November to get it as a Christmas present for some people on my list, Barnes & Noble literally had no copies left in stock. Well, Charles is winking at the title. It's called The Gales of November, The Untold Story of the Edmund Fitzgerald by John U. Bacon, offering a detailed, human-focused account of the 1975 sinking, incorporating interviews with families, exploring the lives of the 29 lost crewmen, and analyzing the Great Lakes' unique dangers and the tragedy's broader economic context. And then the second one from Charles, he says, I meant to check out that book about Theodore Roosevelt's sons hunting a panda bear, which I thought, that can't be a book. And it's a book. It's called The Beast in the Clouds, The Roosevelt Brothers' Deadly Quest to Find the Mythical Giant Panda by Natalia Holt. Just came out this year. It details Teddy Roosevelt's sons, Kermit and Ted, embarking on a perilous 1929 expedition to China's Tibetan Plateau to find and secure a giant panda specimen for American museums. It explores themes of family legacy, scientific ambition, and the harsh realities of early conservation, blending historical adventure with psychological drama. So I'm like, I thought that was a joke at first, Charles, but that sounds fantastic. And Emily, since you've read every book written this year, have you read that one?
I have not. I didn't even know that existed.
I know. It sounds really good.
But I'm sure we have it in one of our libraries, so
I'm sure you do.
Placed.
So that's The Beast in the Clouds, the Roosevelt Brothers' Deadly Quest to Find the Mythical Giant Panda. All right, around we go, Emily Clasper. Second selection for you of books of the year. What's it going to be?
All right. Since I went with something pretty heavy for my first selection, I'm going to go a little bit lighter, but still kind of thoughtful. A friend of mine suggested the book, I'm Starting to Worry About This Black Box of Doom, which sounds like a pretty silly title. And let me tell you, this is like a caper. The premise of this is that you've got this normal guy who's not really doing much with his life. He's pretty much surfing the internet and driving an Uber. And he gets this, I can't remember, it's an Uber or a Lyft, but he's doing ride shares. And he gets a call to pick up this young woman who has this big box, like a steamer trunk kind of box. And she's going to pay him a whole lot of money to take her across the country with this big box as long as he doesn't ask any questions. And he's like, all right, I'm not doing anything. So they're going to go. And of course, hilarity ensues. And they take off across the country, and unbeknownst to him, this becomes some kind of weird online / in-person manhunt across the national manhunt / conspiracy theory / all of these things are going on. And I don't want to give away too much, but there's all these things that happen, and it turns out that not everything is as it seems. And at some point you realize that the black box that is questionable in all of this isn't actually the black box that's in the back of his Uber. They're talking about something else. So it's something that seems really silly and frivolous, but as you go through, it's a lot of commentary about online culture right now. It's a lot of kind of chat room culture. A lot of it is presented in chat room speak. So it is
like you're in a Reddit thread.
Yeah, like you're in a Reddit thread, and it's about how online gossip and theories get kind of take off, and it really made me think about how that culture impacts us, and what the black box of doom really is. Plus, it's really fun. So I had a great time with that. It was one of those things where I sat down and I just read it all the way through, and then I gave it to my husband and he read it all the way through. And plus then I found out that the author, Jason Pargin, has a great TikTok, which is really fun to follow. And he brings up all these weird facts and then makes you think about them in a different way. So now I'm addicted to his TikTok.
Well, I guess I'm going to have to read this, because while Emily was describing the book, I'm starting to worry about this Black Box of Doom by Jason Pargin. I was trying to Google and find the synopsis that tells me what's in the black box, and I couldn't do it. I can't find it. So
Nobody's going to tell you.
Nobody's going to tell me. I'm going to have to read. No, that sounds great. Jason Pargin, the author. There you go. That's choice number 2 for Emily Clasper. Around we go to Michael Solis, Executive Director of Writers and Books. What do you got, Michael?
All right, since my first choice was also a bit heavy, I like to go into the world of science fiction and fantasy, which can also be heavy, but this book was wonderful. The Darkness Outside Us by Elliot Schrafer, and the sequel, which came out this year, which is The Brightness Between Us. Now, this book is really interesting. It takes place many years into the future. Things are not great on Earth. Humans need to find another solution. And so the two political systems team up in the world, and they send out two, I guess, heroes, Ambrose and Kodiak, and they go to help an astronaut who is on a mission trying to find another planet that can be inhabited by humans. Of course, things go wrong. These two astronauts are on this mission alone. They end up falling in love. They have to find another planet and colonize the planet. However, that can't be done in the normal human span of a human lifetime. So the book also delves into how can this love story continue on across years and light years. And it addresses that brilliantly. It was an award winner for the Stonewall Honor Award. And yeah, the sequel does come out. I don't want to give away too much, but it's a brilliant kind of LGBTQ romance story. It embraces love, identity, what it means to be alive. And these two characters are also trying to uncover the truth within the political system of why they've been sent and what their true mission is.
So, okay, I rarely hear about a work of fiction about the future that's like, things have gone really well on Earth and most people are pretty happy and we've created an egalitarian society and it's going really well. That's like not the premise of any book, which, you know, you can understand, right? I don't know how much conflict there would be, but writers don't really have there's a jaundiced view on where we're going, I think, in the literary community, Michael.
I know, and I suppose I like that the second book is called The Brightness Between Us, because there's that sense of hope. If things, are going awful on Earth and things need to change, we need to find a new place. What could that possibly look like? Where do you find the hope in these dire times?
Listen, the first review of The Brightness Between Us says that there is a balance between the struggles of the future, but also the goodness that we might achieve together with some work. I mean, then again, that's like after everything's collapsed, but so I don't, but it sounds, you said fun?
It's a very fun read.
It's
fun.
Yeah,
you can read it. Also, the audio book is wonderful, and you're on this adventure. And again, you just want to keep going and see what happens, because there is that sense of mystery of why have they been sent? Where are they going? What is the true mission behind the mission? And how did they discover? Artificial intelligence also plays a role. The ship that they're on is guided by artificial intelligence. So you have the two main characters plus this AI ship. So really you have the three characters who are journeying together and trying to figure out where they're going.
Got to read The Darkness Outside Us first.
Definitely. I would highly recommend that.
Darkness Outside Us, followed by its sequel, The Brightness Between Us. Elliot Schrafer is the author. Sounds great. That's Michael's second pick. All right. Let's get Laquanda M. Fields, the Fab Librarian's second pick. Go ahead.
My second pick is a little bit darker. I'm sorry, y'all. But I had to go back to what I love to read, really, which is thriller and or horror. Double points if it is both in one. So my second pick is The Jackal, or actually it's Jackal, a novel by Aaron E. Adams. It is considered horror, and it's about Liz Rochester, who is a Black woman, returns to her predominantly white hometown in Pennsylvania for her best friend's wedding. And almost immediately the drama starts. Her goddaughter goes missing, and her goddaughter is biracial and about 9 years old. But what happens from there is that Liz recognizes that the town has a familiar pattern and history of Black girls disappearing around the same time every year. And adults just seem to look away. The families that are left behind from these disappearing girls are sort of ostracized as the town crazies or cast aside because there's no resolution to these crimes. What we find out as the reader is that there is a thing being a local legend that could be responsible for this disappearance. But we don't know who that is until almost the very end. So because this book takes you down so many different paths of who it could be, what it could be, you don't know who's responsible and what the actual local legend is until about the very last chapter. So I was on the edge of my seat through this whole book, because as soon as you think that there's a resolution or that it's found out who it is, it wasn't. So it's one of those stories where you have to really read to the end to get the full picture of what exactly has happened in this hometown.
BuzzFeed loved this book. They said it's a basically a combination of Get Out and The Vanishing Half. And their reviewer read this book in one night. So this is very bingeable, it sounds like, Laquanda.
Sure is.
So again, this book is called Jackal by Aaron E. Adams. Again, fun, intense. I mean, like you said, it was kind of dark here. Where are you putting this one? I mean, it is horror, but a lot of modern horror has an element of humor or irony to it.
So one of the things that I love about this book, Evan, is that it is horror, but it's also not just horror in like the supernatural ghost story sense. It's horror that we experience every day when it comes to like racism, classism, really who's protected in a town, who looks away when things happen. All of those everyday horrors added to the supernatural horror that was weaved throughout the story. But hearing more about the town and the folks in this town and the history of the town adds to the storyline in a way that is not supernatural horror. It's like, oh, this is everyday stuff. This can be really any, small town in USA. So yeah, very top-notch writing, very top-notch character building as well by Aaron E. Adams in this one.
All right, it's called Jackal. There's Laquanda's second selection. Let me read a little bit more email coming in. Mike in Honeoye Falls says, I reread 1984 this year, and then the sequel, which was recently published, called Julia. I was not aware of Julia. Says, Julia is written from the perspective of Winston Smith's lover. Neither book I don't think I would consider great literature, but the commentary on economics and politics as it relates to today's craziness make them an important read right now, especially getting both perspectives. That is from Mike in Honeoye Falls. Thank you, Mike. Interesting stuff there. Linda says, Evan, I haven't been able to read a book since Trump was first elected. I just have no bandwidth. Whew. But Linda says, this year, one that grabbed my attention and held it was called Sociopath, a memoir. It was a page turner by a woman who has lived her whole life as a sociopath, grew up as a kid behaving badly at times, but understanding she was very different and curious about why. She takes us from childhood to high school to college, studying psychology, and now is a professional writer about sociopathy and the ability to help these people. Psychopathy perhaps is an anomaly in the brain which cannot be altered, but sociopaths, through therapy and understanding, can help change people's lives. I especially thought of young parents with problem children who might benefit from this enlightened memoir. It also explains much of what is happening in our government and people in power. That's from Linda. I mean, that's really, really interesting. That reminds me of, who is the guy, Megan Mack, who wrote the book about himself? James Fallon, right? I remember, it's not Jimmy Fallon, it's James Fallon. He was a neuroscientist who wrote a book called The Psychopath Inside, I think. Megan's going to make sure I've got it right. But he was researching people's brains for his job and then got his own family's brain scans just as a control group and saw that there was something amiss. And then he got his own brain scan and he realized that, well, he might be a psychopath, as in he might have nonviolent psychopathy. And so he asked the people around him, like, am I selfish? And they're like, yes. Like, his kids were like, absolutely. You do everything for yourself first. You're not a bad person, but you definitely think of yourself exclusively first. And he had to train himself to try not to do it. But what Linda is saying in this book is that's much harder for someone with psychopathy to do. Sociopathy, apparently, is a little different. And the book is all about that. So thank you, Linda. I'm sorry that your reading bandwidth has gone down in the last decade, but I do appreciate the recommendation. And yeah, the one I was thinking of was The Psychopath Inside, a neuroscientist's personal journey into the dark side of the brain, that came out in 2013. See, we go to weird places together in Rochester's favorite books. It's a great show to start winding down the year. We're going to come back in just a moment, and our guests are going to continue with their ideas on what we might want to read in 2026 if you missed it in 2025. And we've got our colleague Mona Segetola-Slamy popping in with a recommendation. Journalist Justin Murphy will join us with a recommendation. And listeners, you are encouraged to do so as well. Email the program connections@wxxi.org.
Support for your public radio station comes from our members and from Excelis Blue Cross Blue Shield, providing members with options for in-person and virtual care, creating ways to connect to care when and where it's needed. Learn more at excelisbcbs.com.
This is Connections. I'm Evan Dawson. I'm going to warn Emily and Michael and Laquanda. We'll ask them for at least one more here because, sometimes it's hard to choose. And, sometimes when you're on the spot, it's hard to come up with just one here. But someone who has come up with one is my colleague from down the hall at Classical 91.5. We're talking Rochester's favorite books. And Mona Segetola-Slamy is an avid reader. You always have interesting selections. Do you go to the library to ever take books out? Do you ever do that?
Yes, I do.
Are you ever delinquent?
In fact, yes, I have an overdue DVD and a book and the fines over in the other room. But
that's okay. The Rochester Public Library does not charge overdue fines.
Well, then I guess I have a donation for the Friends.
Oh, we do take those.
I do, though, Evan. I am being bad. I have 3 books.
I thought you had chosen one.
I mean, I will narrow it down, but the question is, do you want something old, something new, or something musical?
I would like something old first. Let's go.
Okay.
I want all 3. But
I was in Ireland this year, and I came across a book by an author I'd never heard of, who it turns out is a huge deal in Ireland. There's sculptures and pictures of him all over, Flann O'Brien. And this book from 1939, At Two Swimbirds, is hilarious metafiction. Reading it begs to be read out loud because it sounds like these sort of rambling, overlapping conversations. And as our colleague Rob Braden would tell you, this book also got us a few free pints of Guinness downtown Rochester. So it's an accomplished book.
What's it called again?
It's called At Swim Two Birds by Flann O'Brien.
Okay.
And in it, there's a student who's studying for exams and writing a book, but he's kind of lazy. And he's writing a book with an author who sleeps all the time. And then in that book, that author is writing the characters get away and do whatever they can. And he's trying to write them to be bad people, and they're good. Finn McCool, Irish hero, is in it. A bunch of characters from Westerns that authors don't write about, so they go off and live their own lives. There's a fairy who cheats as cards. And there is the most amazing poem in the world, To a Pint of Guinness, if you want to hear at least a bit.
I do.
Well, oops, I just opened the bit about music instead of the bit about Guinness. When things go wrong and will not come right, though you do the best you can, when life looks black as the hour of night, A pint of plain is your only man. When money's tight and is hard to get, and your horses also ran, when all you have is a heap of debt, a pint of plain is your only man. When health is bad and your heart feels strange and your face is pale and wan, when doctors say you need a change, a pint of plain is your only man. When food is scarce and your larder bare, no rashers grease your pan, when hunger grows as your meals are rare, a pint of plain is your only man. And then one last verse here. In times of trouble and lousy strife, you still have got a darling plan. You still can turn to a brighter life. A pint of plain is your only man. So, but throughout, it's just the language is fun. There's people talking, cross-talking, and it just... And then I do love also the blurb. Dylan Thomas says, "This is just the book to give your sister if she's a loud, dirty, boozy girl." So
Is that the best book blurb ever?
ever. So yeah,
That really-
so there we
that
go.
might
That's
be.
my something old that really knocked my socks off, and I've been in love with since I came across it at that book market.
All right, something new.
Something new. Did you ever read Sideways Stories from Wayside School when you were a
Of
kid?
course.
Yeah, or perhaps Holes? Did
No,
you catch that one?
I
They made a
don't
movie
know.
out of it. Louis Sacker, he has a new book called The Magician of Tiger Castle, and it's more aimed at adults, more because of, I think, like the emotional content, not like, the, ooh, is this too adult for people? And it's sort of like Candide, or it makes me think of Candide. It's about a magician in a fictional country who's kind of not very good at his job. He betrays people. There's lost loves. It's very beautiful and bittersweet. Definitely made. So, yeah, the person who delighted you with Sideways Stories has also written something that you will enjoy very much now, I
And
think.
again, what's the name of it?
It's called The Magician of Tiger Castle.
The Magician of Tiger Castle. All right, and now one about music.
Okay, well, an author from Rochester, Edward Clorman, now based in Wisconsin, he started the Chamber Music Festival in Canandaigua, has written Bach, the Cello Suites, the New Cambridge Music Handbook. So it's about these pieces that Bach wrote for solo cello. They're probably pretty famous, whether it's in video games or anime, or even known as that cello song on Reddit. Or Yo-Yo Ma playing them at, times of political crisis, or Pablo Casals resisting the Spanish government. This gets into the history of what like a dance was and Bach would have been doing, or what was a cello even to Bach's mind. It's not necessarily, it wasn't as fixed of an idea. And then how the pieces were treated throughout the 19th century, how they become political flashpoints to pop culture. And I'd say the greatest recommendation for this for me is I had to read it for an interview that I will have on the air next week, I think, is that I actually put it down when I had work to do and felt inspired to play my viola more because of what I was learning from the book. I went and got my music out. But you don't have to be a musician, I think, to be fascinated by these pieces in history.
All right, so one more time, the name of that and the author.
The Bach, the Cello Suites, and it's by Edward Clorman, who, again, from Rochester, viola player, classical musician who grew up here, is now out in the world. So
you don't have to be a musician, though, to love or appreciate.
I don't think so. Sometimes he gets into harmonies and chords, but he might talk about, like, I didn't know that Bach, who I think of as someone who was very based in Germany in the 18th century, didn't travel out. He studied French. He and his friends were all into French dances. And, so that works into his music. So what is a dance when it's not being danced? What is the history of music instruments? What is the history of politics in this piece? And how? So, there's a lot of cultural history that you may know this music, but it connects to things, not just, oh, this note follows this note.
Isn't it so lovely to think of Bach as just someone hanging out with friends studying French?
Yeah, right? And then we have, we don't even have his manuscript. One of the facts I learned that broke my heart, I always knew we only have copies from his wife, his second wife, Anna Magdalena, and others, a copy of a copy, is that he wrote the violin solo pieces, made the nice copy, and then he wrote these, and he came back to write the nice copy, and he found out that his wife had been dead for months. He, had been traveling, playing music, and so he
How would he know?
had something else
Yeah.
to deal with.
Yeah.
So these personal human stories of this historical figure, along with, again, politics and what is dancing and what is an instrument and all of that.
All right, we asked you for one, you did three, but I'm glad you did. I'm glad you did. Always lovely. Now, please pay your non-fines.
Okay.
Okay?
Will do. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank
and
you,
Very
Mona
great to hear
Segretol-Slamy.
both of all these recommendations. I love science fiction, so hearing about these is really because so often it says something not about the future, but really about us now. So
Thank you, Mona. She is the best. Classical 91.5. Mona Segretol-Slamy, but really actually is delinquent on some of these. So there's no more fines anymore. Is that?
Oh, no.
Has it been like a while?
It's been since 2023.
I think Jerry Seinfeld would like to know this, based on the Bookman episode where he gets in trouble for an old overdue library book. Have you seen that one?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, it's a classic for librarians.
That's what I thought, was going to happen.
We're going to
me.
come get you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
No,
Well,
we're
it's
not.
Good to know, but also still return. Don't take advantage of it. Respect your library. Love your library. Support it, and also maybe make a donation if you want. That's up to you. All right, let me grab a couple of people who are on the phone. And before we get the journalist in, Bill in Livonia has been waiting. So let me grab Bill. We'll keep it tight here. Hi, Bill in Livonia. You're up. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Evan. The book I read this year is called The Wind Done Gone by Alice Randall. It's a companion piece to Gone with the Wind, written from the point of view of Scarlett's half-sister, who's biracial. Gerald O'Hara and Mammy had a baby. It is, now full disclosure, I've read Gone with the Wind 32 times. I've seen the movie 32 times.
Whoa.
Yeah, I'm a bit of a Gone with the Wind nerd. And it is, well, first, good luck finding it. I had to go to Lawrence, Kansas, to a used bookstore there, and I just stumbled over the thing. I've been looking for it ever since it came out in the early 20s. The Margaret Mitchell estate tried to get it blocked from being published, and it was for a while, but they came to an agreement that it could be published. It's brilliant. It's a little salty, shall we say, in some of the more sexual scenes, but Scarlett O'Hara's sister, half-sister, Cinnamon, ends up Rhett Butler's mistress. So if you can find it, it's worth a read. It doesn't ruin Gone with the Wind. It adds another layer. Alice Randall read Gone with the Wind, and she wondered, these are her words now, where are all the mulatto kids at Tara? So she wrote it from that point of view. And at the end, she thanks all the people who helped her write the thing. And the last thanks goes to Margaret Mitchell and her book, Gone with the Wind, that made her think. So if you can find it, it's worth the read. It adds another layer to Gone with the Wind, which still is a story well told. And I just wanted to share that out there, and maybe we could get Alice Randall some customers.
All right, Bill. And it looks like it was published at least a generation ago.
Yeah, early 200s.
2000.
2000.
Yeah. Thank you, Bill. The Wind Done Gone is Bill in Livonia's selection. We appreciate that. Thank you, Bill. And I've got to bring in Justin Murphy now, who is a journalist still, of course, but I don't know how you introduce yourself these days. He's an author, of course, an author of one of the most important books of Rochester history called Your Children Are Very Much in Danger. Justin, how do you introduce yourself these days?
Well, I'm a guy that likes books, Evan.
Okay. Like to write, like to research, like to read.
My day job is research and communications coordinator at Our Local History. We do lessons on the local history of civil rights and resistance. I'm also a big library user, and I just have to add a little context to what Emily said. It's true that fines are no more, but if your 6-year-old takes out 40 books from the library and then scatters them all over your house and loses some of them, you are actually still expected to pay for those at some point.
How do you know?
That's where I find myself right now. So
maybe we can talk, Justin.
Yeah. If there's any strings you could pull, that would be great.
Negotiated settlement.
I might know a guy.
Yeah.
Justin, your book came out in what year?
My book came out. My choice, you mean?
No. The book that you wrote.
The book I wrote. That came out in 2022.
2020. Oh my goodness gracious! So we're coming up on 4 years. It's amazing. I would have said 23 or 24. Wow. Tell people the name of your book, Justin.
My book is called Your Children Are Very Greatly in Danger, School Segregation in Rochester, New York.
It's one of the most important books of local history, I think, ever. And I hope it is being taught and being absorbed by a lot of people. We'll come back and talk about some of those themes on another day with Justin and some of his colleagues. But now I've got room for you to tell us, if you had to pick one from this year, what's your choice for Rochester's favorite books, Justin?
Oh, I read just a great book earlier this year. The author's name is Alvaro Enrique. He's a Mexican writer, and the title of the book is You Dreamed of Empires. And it's a reimagination of the day in 1519 when the conquistador Hernan Cortez entered Tenochtitlan and met Moctezuma, the emperor of the Aztec Empire. and it's kind of as I recall, the book all takes place in one day, and it's like a kind of a gruesome and comic retelling of their situations. Moctezuma, the Aztec emperor, is like hyped up on psychedelics throughout the whole book. He's got these internal Aztec politics that he's dealing with. And then Cortez, on the other hand, is being lured into kind of like a labyrinth that they don't really understand what they've gotten themselves into. They're trying to impress with all of their finery as best they can and finding it to be a little ridiculous outside of the normal European context. They've got all the physical torments that you would expect of 16th century Europeans landing in the New World for the first time. But it's so funny. It's got so many interesting dynamics. The language is funny, and there's Aztec words throughout. One scene that sticks with me is there's a head rolling down that's from a person who's been sacrificed, like a cabbage that fell off of a truck. But there's power dynamics between women who are exerting influence in different kinds of ways, and people in various states of servitude. There are translators who kind of find themselves all in the middle of it. It's tremendous. It's inventive and funny and moves quickly. It's a fantastic book.
It's called You Dreamed of Empires, Alvaro Enrique. Justin, thank you. Another historical fantasy fiction. We are on a roll this hour with that. Justin, thank you. I wish I could keep you longer, but let's talk in the new year and let's get back to the work you're doing. I know you and your colleagues have a lot to do. We'll put it that way, and we'll talk in 2026.
Okay, happy holidays.
Justin Murphy, the book You Dreamed of Empires. I'm trying to quickly read through the New York Times review. That is definitely going on the list. That is really good. Have you read that, Emily Clasper?
No, but it's going on my list.
It's going on the list, absolutely. Okay, we have just enough time, about 90 seconds apiece, for all of you to choose one more. So Emily Clasper, director of the Rochester Public Library and Monroe County Library System, what do you got?
All right, real quick, one that I really couldn't put down was Homegoing by Gyasi. It is about the transatlantic slave trade. It begins generations ago and follows these two young women and down through the generations, how they are interconnected and how that slave trade impacted their families through generation after generation after generation. And I honestly could not put that down. It was amazing, and it was eye-opening and just absolutely wonderful from the beginning to the end.
How did that one land on your radar?
In terms of,
I mean, you got 109 books to read. How did this one end up as one of your selections?
It was fascinating. It was a learning experience. It was emotional. It absolutely ticked all the boxes in terms of being interesting and entertaining and so on. And I just really couldn't put it down. The characters were really well written. It was excellent from beginning to end.
Homegoing by Gyasi.
Yes.
Is the name of the book. All right, Michael Solis, one more.
All right, number 3, I'm going to recommend Cinema Love by Jiaming Tang. I don't know if anyone has read this, but it's a brilliant book. It's about gay men in rural China and the women who marry them. It's an award-winning book. I got to meet the author Jiaming Tang at the Publishing Triangle Awards ceremony earlier this year. And read the book later on. It's a critically acclaimed novel about queer love, secrets, and survival. It follows gay men in rural China at their cruising spot, which is an old cinema. It takes place across 3 different timelines in post-socialist China, in 1980s Chinatown, and then in contemporary New York City. You get a bit of perspectives of the men who go to the cinema, but also some of the wives, the woman who runs the cinema, and a lot of the conflict and the drama that arises in those relationships. But beautifully written and well worth your while.
All right. This book is Cinema Love by Jiaming Tang. There you go. That's 3 from Michael. Last of the picks now coming from Laquanda Fields. We got less than 90 seconds. Go ahead, Laquanda.
So I'm going to recommend One of Us Knows by Alyssa Cole, which is a psychological thriller. And what I loved about this book, because I listened to this through audio, is that there were varying different characters and voices used, because the main character, who is a historical preservationist, is living with dissociative identity disorder. So from various different perspectives, you are hearing the story from not only the main character, but her alters, as they try to find out what's happening in an estate that she has been hired to take care of. So it's a very interesting read, definitely a thriller. And another one of those, you don't know what the answer is or what's happening until the very end, which I love. I like a slow burn read, especially when I'm listening to an audiobook.
One of Us Knows by Alyssa Cole. Laquanda, thank you. I really appreciate you being generous with your time and making it work for us. Let's talk books, writing, and more in 2026. How's that sound?
I would love that.
I would love that too. Thank you, Laquanda M. Fields, the Fab Librarian. Emily Clasper from the Rochester Public Library, Monroe County Library System. A lot going on in your world.
Absolutely.
I suspect we'll have plenty to talk about in 2026. Will you come back and join us?
I would love it.
And once again, Michael Solis, Executive Director, still new. New is okay to say, right?
Yeah, 3 months. That's new. So.
The new Executive Director of Writers and Books. Such an important institution in this town. And I know they're so glad to have Michael. Michael's going to come back, I hope with him a week or two. So maybe not.
Let's book it.
All right. Yes?
Yeah,
Come back
totally.
and talk to him. Michael Solis, great to have you. Listeners, both hours today, Rochester's Favorite Books 2025. Listeners are invited to share. We're going to create a list of everything we discussed, so you've got it if you want ideas for yourself to read in 2026, or maybe to squeeze in before the end of 2025. More books coming up.
This program is a production of WXXI Public Radio. The views expressed do not necessarily represent those of this station, its staff, management, or underwriters. The broadcast is meant for the private use of our audience. Any rebroadcast or use in another medium without expressed written consent of WXXI is strictly prohibited. Connections with Evan Dawson is available as a podcast. Just click on the Connections link at WXXInews.org.